Your information station, WTIM.
You're listening to WTIM, your information station, and our morning show. It's brought to you by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville. I'm your host, Grayson Bauman. Joining us in this segment, Andrew Holsinger. Andrew is a horticulture educator with the University of Illinois Extension. Andrew, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm enjoying this cool weather.
I am definitely enjoying this cool weather as of right now. 83 degrees was the high yesterday, I think, and today probably just about the same. And it's like, hey, my flowers aren't wilting probably for you. The garden's looking maybe a little better right now. But, man, it's just been beautiful these last couple of days. So I want to talk, and you want to talk, we want to talk about native plants. And we don't see a lot of those probably out in gardens and landscaping, but we'd like to maybe try and see if we can't see more of those things. Why does native landscaping, why does native plants in your landscaping matter, and why are we talking about it even today?
Well, when I think about native plants, I think about the durability. These plants resonate from our local central Illinois. Illinois is known as a prairie state. Well, it's not such the prairie state as it once was. So we have a lot of adaptations that have gone on. You know, we have agriculture, and I know the Farm Progress Show's coming up here just around the corner, and I've been there in the past, and we handed out milkweed seeds as a gesture of promoting native plants, but that didn't resonate so well with some of the farmers. Like, this is a weed, or so adapting to the local conditions that we have. These native plants are suited to our local soil, our climate, the amount of rainfall that we have, and they reduce the need for fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation. They're deeply rooted. And so if you look at some of the diagrams that they have, or even sometimes they've taken pictures or photographs of the soil profile of what the root systems look like, there's like twice as many roots as what's above the soil. I mean, they go down deep, and so they do a good job of filtering the water, holding on to some of that water that, we have the need to reduce our pesticide runoff. And so using these plants in the community can help in a lot of various ways, but it essentially provides some food and habitat for pollinators, birds, other wildlife that we want to see those things. These wildlife make the news whenever you hear about monarchs, and what's the struggles with the monarch butterfly and other pollinators. We've heard about bees. A lot of times we hear about the honeybees, but there's also a vast amount of native bees. And so they have to have a food source throughout the year. They get started very early, and then it gets to this point in the season, and there may not be as many flowers as in bloom, or, with this heat that we've had, some of the plants sizzle for their beauty, but they also kind of sizzle for their durability in the landscape. So having the resources of pollen and nectar for the native bees and the honeybees and the other pollinators is an important aspect for native plants.
So much to unpack there. You consider the biodiversity side of it, so you consider all of that. One thing that I kind of heard in that was they're almost less work. You don't have to fertilize them near so much. You don't have to really worry about the water maybe so much because they're from this area. They're used to this conditions of this area. And so would I be fair to say that they might be less work than some of your other plants?
Maybe after the first year.
Okay.
So what some people get enthused about is the fact that it is less work in the long run, but there's also an establishment period of getting these plants established. And so you're going to have to water them. You're going to have to take care of them to make sure that they do get established. But then once they get established, they are pretty durable in the landscape. And you were talking about cost savings or cost benefits. Well, one of the things that resonates with people is the lawn. I don't know if you are well attuned, but the lawn costs money. Every time you take that mower out, there's gasoline or diesel fuel that's being put into that tractor to do that mowing, and there's the maintenance issues and things like that. So having a native plant kind of dynamic, planting native plants in replacement of a lawn can have the benefits of reducing some of those costs to avoid the cost of mowing and some of these items that we have that cost money.
And if you hit a rock, bend that blade, and all of a sudden, yeah, that mower is out of commission for a little bit. So I guess for me, in my mind, I would love to have a lot of land or quite a bit of land and do something like this where you just kind of let some prairie grass grow, try and get some native plants and really do that. But I know that's not the thing for everybody. And some people need to mow. They've got pastures or whatever else that goes with it. Do you have any idea of how much decline in native plants that we've really had? I mean, I think of how much farmland there is and how much is just tilled over. How much really even allowance of native plants do we really have in central Illinois or in Illinois as a whole?
It's been quite significant. I don't have the exact number here, but it's quite significant, the drastic amount of decrease for when we talk about prairie, usually the word remnant is associated with that. So there are kind of the last, but it's not the last, because we have a lot of efforts in preserving prairie plants. And there's things like a seed bank where they have germplasm, where they've stored some of these native plants. And I believe that's at the Chicago Botanical Garden. They have a repository or a germplasm of native plant seeds from the tall grass prairie. And so there's a lot of heritage in these plants that they have been here in Illinois and our surrounding Midwest. And there's also a local ecotype. So the native plants that are here in our region, there's an ecotype of that. And so they succeed and they have thrived here. And a lot of the seeds that people have, you talk to nurserymen or people that are in the native plant industry, they had pretty humble beginnings of going by maybe an abandoned railway and finding some of those plants and picking up seeds. And some of the people that are some of the most well-known in the native plant industry as far as design, like they got their first exposure when they were very young and found these like native orchids out in the prairie, and like, wow, that's just a fascinating plant. This is cool. And so that enthusiasm is carried over, and a lot of the people that you might find that have done the most in native plants have had a lifetime of working with native plants and have contributed to our wealth and appreciation of the knowledge of native plants.
And I think it's growing a little bit. I'm starting to see more pollinator gardens or butterfly gardens and things of that nature. And so I hope this continues to grow. I would love to see native plants flourish, even though farmland does kind of take precedence at this time with it. We talked a little bit about those environmental, the economic benefits. Obviously, you mentioned after establishing, they can be less work and less cost to you. But what are some of the current trends in native landscaping? What are some of the things that you've seen out there? What are some of those things that people are talking to you about with native landscaping?
That lawn to meadow kind of conversion of transitioning, replacing that turf with native wildflowers, that's a pretty prevalent topic. They're doing research at the Chicago Botanic Garden on what kind of grasses or what kind of plants can you substitute for your lawn, what will work, what won't work. It's hard whenever you're it's about the use. So whenever you're using turf for a particular use, like a soccer field, it's got to be a soccer field or a baseball field. But at your home, maybe you have some adaptability to what you can use and what you can but as you mentioned, the popularity of pollinator plants and native landscaping, I think it is kind of encouraged by our younger population. If you look at amount of classes that people take on a college base, a lot of them are gearing towards that ecological kind of fields and careers. And so I know that even in the dynamic of horticulture. I went to the Perennial Plant Association National Symposium. And so these are people that are in the industry, of growing plants. And the main focus of that meeting dealt with native plants and with the prairie and developing, new cultivars or nativars of native plants. So there is some contention, though, whenever it comes to native plants, that some are the purest of, well, you got to have the straight species. So this is going to benefit the most pollinators if you have the species. But then you have nativars, what are cultivated natives. And so they've been developed where maybe they're a little bit more conducive to the landscape. I would say my bit of advice for you, if you're thinking about doing native plants, is to start small, develop a small space in your native planting. And if you have a native planting, think of it as the same as your landscape, like your landscaping plants. Like, don't be afraid to integrate and have a matrix of plants. The plants have different habits. And so learning about the plants according to your site is going to help you know which plants self-seed more readily, because those plants are going to spread throughout your landscape. And so there's probably going to be some editing that needs to go on through the course of your gardening. So taking plants out that have self-seeded, maybe sharing those with others, or adding them to the compost pile. There's no hard and fast rules when it comes to gardening. You have your own perceptions of what you'd like to do. But having these native plants, they don't have to be a substitute for agriculture, but they can be an added benefit. So there's been farmers that have added cut flowers, so to speak, like with corkscrew willows and red twig dogwoods, and those could be used in the floral industry. So depending on what the market is, the agroforestry kind of aspect, you can add some plantings to have an additional income, or reduce some of that fertilizer loss or soil loss. So thinking about that dynamic, you can add native plants or other plantings that are going to benefit you. Windbreaks, I think of. So things like that can cut down the smell around pig farm, if you will. So all kinds of different things.
I wouldn't mind the smell reduction around some pig farms, but the lawn to meadow conversions, that definitely interests me as well. And I think all of this is growing a little bit. So this type of conversation, I hope, continues to boost the trend in that right direction as well. Well, let's take ourselves a break. We're joined by Andrew Holsinger, horticulture educator with the University of Illinois Extension. We're talking native plants and why they matter, their benefit, and also some of those trends in native landscaping. We'll come back. We'll talk more about native plants with horticulture educator Andrew Holsinger on WTIM.
WTIM.
Let's check the opening numbers now at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Thursday. Jim Taylor, RFD Radio Network, slightly higher with corn, beans, and Chicago wheat. September corn opening $3.82, up 2 pennies. December corn up to $4.06, and March corn $4.23 3/4, up 1 3/4. September beans starting the day $10.17 3/4, up 2 3/4. November beans up 2 1/4, $10.38 1/4. January beans $10.57 1/2, up 2 1/4. September wheat opening $5.09, up 3 1/2. December wheat up 3 1/4, $5.31 1/2. March wheat $5.49 3/4, up 3 1/4. September bean meal $2.90 that's up 20 cents. And September bean oil, $51.66, up 46 cents. Opening numbers at the Chicago Board of Trade on this Thursday morning. Jim Taylor on the RFD Radio Network.
You know something, Troy? We are blessed.
Yes, we are. And we take so much for granted.
While most of us wonder what we're going to eat, some children in our community are wondering if they're going to eat.
That's not right. So we're doing something about it.
Once again, Jansen's Heating and Air is helping to raise money and awareness for our friends at Blessings in a Backpack. This organization provides underprivileged school children with a backpack of easy-to-prepare, ready-to-eat food to take home every weekend during the school year.
We know these kids get the food they need during the school week.
But Blessings in a Backpack ensures they get much-needed nourishment on the weekends, too.
So for every service call, maintenance call, or installation in the month of August, Jansen's Heating and Air is donating $1 to Blessings in a Backpack.
If you need maintenance, service, or a new heating and air system, now's the best time to do it.
Call Jansen's Heating and Air.
562-5201.
Learn more at jansensheating.com.
Double your impact with sight and sound. Reach customers through our 6 regional radio stations, plus capture their attention with our 36 by 72-inch digital billboard right on Route 29 in Taylorville. That's nearly 11,000 drivers seeing your message every single day while they're already listening to your radio ads. Ready to maximize your reach? Call your regional radio account manager today and put your business in front of eyes and ears across Central Illinois. Regional radio is where your message gets noticed.
If you're 40 and over, you'll recognize these artists by their first names. Frank, Dean, Sammy, Andy, Nat, Diana, Michael. Well, here's the big news. You can now hear Central Illinois' largest music library with over 3,500 songs on air and online at 965thechill.com. Tune in on the FM dial in Christian County and on your computer or smartphone. Hear these great artists and many more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 965thechill.com.
WTIM.
You're listening to WTIM, your information station, and our morning show brought to you by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville. I'm your host, Grayson Bauman. Joining us in this segment, Andrew Holsinger, horticulture educator with the University of Illinois Extension. We're talking native plants today, and Andrew, before the break, had mentioned starting small might be the best place to do so. The other thing is designing with intent. And Andrew, what can you tell us about actually being kind of mindful about where you're designing and what you're trying to do?
Well, just because native plants, sometimes you think about going wild. You know, these things are in nature and they're native, but they can get a bad reputation. But if they're used in the context of putting them in the landscape and keeping them at bay, if you will, of the ones that self-seed or the ones that maybe get large, like cup plant is a native plant. Well, you don't see it too much in the landscape because it gets like 7-8 feet tall. So like, well, I don't want this thing taking over my yard or whatever. But if you pruned it back and, you know, only allowed what you wanted to have, then it wouldn't be so bad. But using layers of plants, you know, we talked about native plants, but maybe some people forget that also includes trees. There's a lot of native trees, and there's many caterpillars that feed on the leaves of trees. The oaks are one of the predominant ones that are the host plants for a lot of our caterpillars that eventually turn into those moths and butterflies. But also your shrubs. We have a wide variety of native shrubs, and they're there for the duration. So they're going to come back year after year and provide those benefits. You also have to think about the maintenance. So whenever you're planting these plants, a lot of the times the weeds, you know, this year has been kind of crazy for weeds, right? We've just had inundated with weeds. The lawns that didn't have crabgrass, well, with the weather, we've had crabgrass. We've got lots of weeds. So you're going to have to be mindful of that, of being sure to keep the weeds out, maybe applying some mulch, be sure to water, avoid those pesticides and fertilizers to your native plants because they really don't need the fertilization. They're adapted to the native soil. So you're going to save money on the fertilization. They're going to be in your landscape doing well. And just think about what plants can pair well with your native plants. They have diverse needs, so you can have some that could flourish when others don't. So just check out some good resources. I just picked up this book, The Gardener's Guide to Prairie Plants. Has all kinds of prairie plants in it, how to burn, what to do about propagation, and there's many other resources out there. Check us out on our web.
That's what I was thinking. U of I Extension is a great place to go for it. Andrew, thank you for your time here today and talking to us about native plants. Couple big takeaways on my end, and we'll talk about those once we get out of here. But you're listening to WTIM, your information station, and our morning show brought to you by People's Bank and Trust.
The Big 870 W.